Good evening, Dr. Jones and fellow classmates. I'm Jamin Reyes. Did you know that 40% of the actions that you perform every day, you do so unconsciously? The purpose of this speech is to inform you about habits. The reason why I chose habits is because I personally want to change my habits for the better. And I could not think of any other better way to start than preparing a speech about habits. In this speech, we're going to take a look at what habits are, the habit loop process, and how to change your habits. The references for this speech is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, Atomic Habits by James Clear, and the Time Magazine special, The Power of Habit. Now, let's start with examining what exactly habits are. They're who we are, what we do, and how we do it. Habits are automatic behaviors that are hardwired into our brains. Specifically, right here, our basal ganglia. They form during new situations. When your brain goes through a new situation, it's working overtime. It's analyzing information in order to determine the best possible course of action. A lot of energy is expended during this process, which explains why whenever you do something new, you're tired afterwards. Think about the first day at your job or the first day at school. You're surrounded with new places, new faces, and new tasks to perform. Afterwards, I bet you're feeling pretty tired. This is exactly why we need habits. Habits allow you to perform automatic behaviors so your brain can conserve energy. It does this by bypassing the decision-making process. Without habits, we would be going through our day-to-day lives, expending a lot of energy just to do something as simple as tying your shoe. Now let's take a look at the habit loop process. According to my sources, there are 4 steps in the habit loop process. The first one is a cue. The cue is a signal to the brain that triggers an action. It can be visual in nature, it can be emotional, it could be a pattern of thoughts, or even a time of day. The next step is the craving. The craving is the desire to change your current state, or your current internal state. It could be the feeling of wanting to be satisfied, relieved, or stimulated when you're bored. As a result, the 4th step, a response, is generated to satisfy this craving. It could be an action or a thought. It could be the feeling of pride after finishing a hard workout, or the feeling of relaxation after taking a shot at the bar. Note, habits need all 4 components to work. Without no reward, there will be no incentive to carry out the habit. Without no cue, there is no signal to trigger the habit. Therefore, habits are delicate in nature. This is good news for those of us who want to start changing our habits. And we'll check out how to do exactly that in the next section. When going about trying to change your habits, it's important not only to focus on techniques, but most importantly, changing your mindset. My sources suggest that there are 3 layers of change. The first is changing your results, and that's based upon achieving a certain outcome. So it could be making more money, losing weight, or getting good grades in school. The second layer of change is changing your processes, and it's fairly straightforward. It's just the method of substituting one action for another. For example, when you wake up in the morning, instead of checking your phone, you could read a book. And instead of spending money every time you get a paycheck, you could put that money in the bank instead. Although changing your process is effective, there's even one more layer of change, that's even more effective. And that's changing your perception of how you see yourself. Your current habits are a reflection of who you perceive yourself to be. For example, a person who thinks of themselves as generous will unconsciously go out the way to be generous. On the other hand, a person who thinks themselves as unreliable will unconsciously go out the way to be irresponsible regarding their obligations. So you must remember that if you want to change your habits, start with your mindset. The path to better habits starts with visualizing that you are the person that you already want to be. For example, if you want to save more money, picture yourself to be a financially responsible person already. The next step is to start small. It's important to start small because it increases the chances that you're actually going to go follow through. So, for example, in wanting to save money, instead of going out and setting the goal of spending or saving $200 every paycheck, start with 20. The next step is to be consistent in your actions. It's important to stay consistent because you are still in the early stages of your newfound identity, and it needs evidence, it needs proof that you are who you say you are. So every time you have a small win, you're accumulating that proof, and eventually you start to believe that you are the type of person that you want to be. The last step is to take the habit to the next level. In our example of saving money, it could be increasing the amount of money we save from 20 to 40. And then you gradually, slowly improve upon that until eventually, before you know it, you're saving $200 a paycheck. Now saving is a habit for you, thanks to changing the way that you perceive yourself, starting small, and staying consistent. Are there any questions?
How long before the habit is like installed in your daily plans?
That's a good question. So it actually depends on how frequent you perform the habit. So when starting out a new habit, it's important more for it to be frequent than the duration of each session. So your brain has a practice of firing the neurons it needs to fire in order to complete the habit. Any other questions?
How have you incorporated your research from the paper into your own daily habits?
That's a good question. So growing up, I was always a lifelong reader. So I'd say for the first 24 years of my life, I was reading consistently, and then I had kids, and it kind of got harder to read. And instead of reading, I would be on my computer, I would be on the internet. So after doing my research, whenever I realized that I'm feeling bored, I'd recognize that's a cue. And instead of reaching for my computer for entertainment, which was a craving, I would pick up a book instead. Any other questions? Awesome. In conclusion, habits are automatic behaviors that our brain employs to conserve energy. The 4 steps in the habit loop is the cue, the craving, the trigger, the response, and the reward. Lastly, in order to change a habit, you must change your beliefs, start small, and stay consistent. Thank you.